Late modernism continues on the basis of the international style, but with a new willingness to move beyond the vocabulary of flat roofs and rectilinear planes, of white walls and maximal glass. Louis Kahn was born in Estonia, but graduated from the Architectural School of the University of Pennsylvania in 1924. He worked as a draftsman and designer in a number of architectural offices. He began teaching at Yale in 1947. His first important building local to us is the Yale University Art Gallery, built in 1951. It sits in striking contrast next to the original Yale Art School building, which is adjoined on the interior. Kahn uses full concrete walls on the north and south facing sides of the buildings. Here you can see that he uses full glass walls on the east and west facing sides. So these planes of the full glass on the east and west and the full concrete on the north and south create contrast and create sort of a darkness and a light to the different sides of the building. Inside, the gallery floors are open spaces made special by ceilings formed by triangular coffers of concrete structural slabs. Kahn became known best within the design world for his theory and philosophies of design. He was deeply concerned with expression of materials and with the ways in which light reveals form and creates the nature of interior spaces. Unitarian Church in Rochester, New York, is a cluster of multipurpose rooms surrounding a central church sanctuary, where light enters from windows high up on the roof and projects down. The windows cannot be seen from the positions within the church, so the light seems to enter from a mysteriously invisible source. Another building of Kahn's local to us is the Yale Center for the British Arts, which also uses skylit courts to define space. The gallery spaces on multiple levels surround and overlook these skylit courts. Here we see the surrounding gallery spaces on the top level are also defined by skylights. Another architect I'd like to talk a little bit about is I.M. Pei. I.M. Pei was deeply entrenched in early modernism and the international style, with the design of the National Airlines Terminal in 1972. This structure is steel and has a roof with a space frame structure that is supported by massive exterior columns, creating the ability to enclose the space entirely with glass. The building suggests a strong attachment to Mies van der Rohe's concept of universal space, and is very similar to his last major work, the National Gallery in Berlin, that we looked at during early modernism. The main pavilion of Terminal 6 has a deep roof truss that rests on 16 enormous cylindrical concrete columns. That eliminated the need for load-bearing walls, which allowed I.M. Pei to design an all-glass enclosure, so you can look straight through the building and out the other side. Rain is actually drained off the roof through the columns, which eliminates the need for any visible ductwork. This is the open interior, so the boundary you can see is almost erased between inside and out. Pei tried to create an environment for travelers that was serene, generous, clear, spacious, simple, and dignified. Many architects speak of creating transparent spaces. Mr. Pei pulled it off. I.M. Pei's Terminal 6 for the National Airlines was unfortunately demolished in 2011. As I.M. Pei's career moved forward, he designed several art centers. The Des Moines Art Center in Iowa, designed with Elil Saarinen, has strong geometric forms that create a simple setting for sculptural and paintings in the gallery spaces. This is the East Building that was added to the National Gallery in D.C. between 1968 and 1978. It's based on triangular forms that dominate the main atrium of the space. So you can see that that was a popular concept in this late modernist period, as these triangulated forms. just like we talked about with Khan. Here you get a view of the skylit roof that's formed by that triangular structural grid. Balconies on several levels overlook the main open space and give access to galleries and other secondary spaces on seven levels. There's also a giant mobile by Alexander Calder that introduces brilliant red color into the otherwise very neutral tone of the space established by the marble wall surfaces. Triangulation is also the central theme for IMP's pyramid structure in the court of the Louvre in Paris. The steel and glass pyramid forms a new entrance to the Louvre, giving access to the stairs and elevator leading to a vast lower concourse that acts as an entrance foyer and location for shops, exhibits, and a cafe. Although the introduction of the modern structure into the court of the historic Louvre raised a lot of controversy, the completed project has become recognized as a major success. Glimpses of the surrounding Renaissance architecture are set off by the pyramidal geometry. The great winding stair that leads to the lower level entrance of the Louvre has a winding flow. Another architect that we want to look at again, Frank Lloyd Wright. He had a continuing active career in the post-war era, which led to one of his most famous and final works, the Guggenheim Museum. It was built in New York City, from 1956 to 1959. In 1959, when the Guggenheim Museum opened, traffic on Fifth Avenue actually moved in both directions. So as you drove northward, the bulbous form emerged from behind flat-fronted apartment buildings like a balloon in the Macy's Day Thanksgiving Parade. The building had been created to display art, but received constant criticism that the building itself upstaged the artwork. Its 50th anniversary in 2009 marked the completion of an extensive restoration of the building and the 50th anniversary of the death of its maddening, egotistical, duplicitous creator. Wright died at 91 in April of 1959, 6 months before the museum was finished. The museum's main rotunda space is formed by a great spiral ramp. Artworks are displayed against the outside wall, which follows the curve of the ramp. Visitors can look down to the ground below or up to the skylit dome above. The museum's director fought with Wright over almost every aspect of the building. Once the architect was gone, Sweeney painted the interior white instead of the ivory that Wright had wanted, rather than hang the paintings directly on the backward sloping walls where Wright wanted them to appear as if they were on the artist's easels. He installed them upright on metal rods projecting from the walls. Over the years, the building has been pushed and pulled in all kinds of directions, rarely to its benefit. Wright envisaged the Guggenheim as a curving wave that never breaks. When it opened, John Kennedy in the Times called it a war between architecture and painting in which both come out badly maimed. Let's talk about a terminology that comes about in mid and late modernism. Brutalist architecture is a descendant of the modernist movement. It emerged in the late 1930s and early 1940s, and it gained a lot of popularity in the late 1950s and early to mid 1960s. The term originates from the French word for raw, in the term used by Le Corbusier to describe his choice of material, béton brut, which means raw concrete. Brutalism gained considerable momentum as economically depressed and World War II ravaged communities sought inexpensive construction and design methods for low-cost housing, shopping centers, and government buildings. The style has been most commonly used in the design of institutional buildings, such as libraries, courts, public housing, and city halls. Brutalism also became popular for educational buildings, especially university buildings, but was relatively rare for corporate projects, which largely preferred the international style. The brutalist architectural aesthetic is based on the idea of honest construction. It is characterized by simple and massive block-like forms using raw concrete. Concrete is used for its raw and unpretentious honesty. Surfaces of cast concrete are made to reveal the basic nature of its construction, revealing the texture of the wooden planks used for the in situ casting forms. If you ever get close to one of these structures, walk up to the concrete itself. You'll see it. We usually do a walking tour in downtown New Haven where you can see this up close and personal. But you can actually see the wood grain in the concrete where they had framed up a wooden structure, poured the concrete inside, let the concrete dry, and then removed the wood from the form. So then the concrete could stand on its own. But what's left behind is the wood grain and texture and pattern from the frame that was up there. There are two examples of Marcel Breuer's brutalist projects in New Haven. One is the Pirelli building beside IKEA with the large sort of like floating concrete block that you've probably seen driving down 95. And there's also Yale Becton's engineering building, which closely resembles this project that you're looking at here for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Relating back to museum designs in New York City like the Guggenheim, the Whitney Museum of American Art is also New York City by Marcel Breuer. The massive, heavy structure houses spaces of austerity and dignity. The building is also considered brutalist in style. The Whitney was located here from 1966 to 2014, when the museum relocated to a new building in the West Village Meatpacking District area that can be viewed by the High Line. It reopened at its new location in 2015. Leading to the interior, a bridge entrance over an open garden takes you to the main lobby area. This entrance and a basement cafe prepare the visitor for the gallery spaces. One very large projecting window, asymmetrically placed, allows the visitor a glimpse of the out of doors and the outside world, a glimpse into the galleries. Eros Saarinen. We're going to talk about him for quite a bit here. He has a huge impact on architecture. He explored a lot of the possibilities inherent in reinforced concrete, which we've been talking about as a material for most of this lecture. He was looking at it as a structural material that he could use to create freely curving forms that characterized the TWA terminal at JFK Airport, both outside and inside. The design is termed futurist in style and is the beginning of a form of postmodern architecture that was influenced by car culture, jets, the space age, and the atomic age. Work takes place here in this picture on a model of the TWA terminal around 1956. Construction in this image is underway at the TWA terminal. This design drawing studies a column form. And here you get to see that column form that you saw the detail of visible during construction. The walkway at the TWA terminal from the airline gates leads you to the main lobby's interior. The expansive, futuristic terminal building was described as the Grand Central of the jet age. Once in the main lobby, we begin to see the curving concrete forms of the interior. So if any of you are skateboarders, you'll feel my same sentiment here, but I've always wanted to ride my board on these smooth curving forms. This is the information desk, which is made up of freely flowing curved forms. Oops, wrong slide. Let me go back. There we go. That's the one I wanted you to be seeing. So you can see these like really freely flowing curvy forms that only the material concrete would really allow you to be able to build like this. Now we'll go to this slide. This is actually the information desk from above, where you get to see where you watch the cities click by. So this is what everybody in the whole airport would be staring at and watching for people coming and going. These curving stairs access the upper levels. It has a simple metal railing that acts as a decorative detail. Large glass areas emit light in ways that accentuate the sculptural forms of the structure. So again, we've talked about this many, many times in this lecture. We're really using light as this active element in architecture in this late modernist period. Red accents enhance and contrast the curving forms, while also lending to the red carpet glamour of the jet-set traveler. This is a night shot of the interior of the open TWA terminal around 1962. Exiting the building, we once again see the freely curving forms of reinforced concrete. The TWA terminal was given landmark status in 1994 and ceased operations in 2001. A new terminal was built around it for JetBlue Airways called Terminal 5, so you may have actually flown out of a terminal that's right next to this one. In 2016, they began converting the original terminal into the TWA Hotel, which actually opened last spring, 2019. So I've attached a quick video in Canvas for you to see what that space looks like now in real life. Saarinen was actually a graduate of Yale University, and he built their hockey rink, which is called David S. Ingalls Skating Rink, in 1958, right here in New Haven. The building is characterized by a sweeping domed roof and is lovingly known as the Yale Whale. Though the rink is seemingly heavy and brutal, it truly is a tensile structure. So the main structure comes from a 290-foot-long central spine that arches like a backbone of reinforced concrete. From this central support, the timber roof is hung on a cable net structure, which gives it the signature double curve. This cable net structure is what I'm referring to when I call it a tensile structure, where everything is just being held up in tension. So further cables running from the central arch to the outer edges of the building help stabilize the structure against wind loads. The experience on the interior both reflects and refracts the image of the exterior. The underside of the oak roofs adds a sense of scale and warmth. The sloping ramps of the interior trace the outside roof line and lead the viewer to inhabit the shape and feel the structure. Whenever I go to watch hockey games there, I feel like I'm just like Jonah in the belly of the whale. It's a really big experience. Here you can actually see the beginning of the construction of the rink. So you're looking at that giant concrete spine. And the project was completed in 1959. Another recognizable curving structure of Eero Saarinen's is the St. Louis Gateway Arch that's constructed between 1947 and 1961. That picture that I wanted you to actually be looking at is here. I skipped a few slides to save some time for online learning. So the arch was actually constructed between 1947 and 1961. So you're looking at a scale model of it with Saarinen standing behind it. Here you see construction underway on the Saarinen-designed St. Louis Gateway Arch. The newly completed at the time in 1968 St. Louis Gateway Arch you see in this picture. Here. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with the slides today. It just keeps skipping over where I'm trying to go. At any rate, I was trying to make something relatable from Eero Saarinen and his building style, from a few things that maybe you have or haven't seen to something you definitely know about. So it kind of cements him in your mind. And lastly, I just wanted to talk about one other person who's a furniture designer, so we can see how some of these larger architectural ideas translate down to some smaller scale objects. Warren Plattner studied architecture at Cornell University. Following his work with legendary designers Raymond Loewy, Eero Saarinen, and I.M. Pei, he immersed himself in the creation of steel wire furniture, devising the method and tooling to produce the lounge chair in the line as well. Notable among his residential and commercial projects are the George Jensen Design Center and the Windows on the World restaurant in the World Trade Center. Both were in New York City. This chair is currently part of the Knoll Studio collection, which includes a lounge chair, armchair, and stool. So you can follow this lecture by watching a short video about the TWA terminal and see some Eero Saarinen in action.